All right, good day, everyone. This is Jason Straight with the Cloud Pass Virtual Group. Our presenter today is Ben Watt, and his session is Power Automate Image Analytics. Before we get started, I do have a few announcements, so I'm going to go through those real quick. All right, so the first announcement is this virtual group is brought to us by Microsoft Azure. Microsoft Azure supports this virtual group and hopes that folks will take a look at their cloud offerings, and also as a help to make sure that people know what they can and are able to do in the cloud. If you are not yet a member, please join us at cloud.pass.org. That gets you access to all of the upcoming sessions. If you are interested in presenting for the virtual group, where we are always looking for more presenters, you can reach us at cloud@pass.org or at the Cloud Virtual Group call for speakers out on our website at cloud.pass.org. This fall is the Pass Summit 2020. Pass has announced that the Pass Summit 2020 will be a virtual conference due to a lot of the travel and congregation restrictions that are expected to still be in place in November. If you want, you can get a discount on your registration. The amount that I have on the screen actually has changed. The new discount code for the reduced price on the Pass Summit is just the discount is only $50 now, but the price for the Pass Summit is also about a quarter of what it previously was. So if you have not registered and you want to register and get a discount, you can do so using our virtual group discount code. This virtual group is part of a number of virtual groups that Pass helps to support. They cover areas from professional development to women in technology, and even focus at times on different languages such as Global Hebrew and Global Italian. All of them offer you a great opportunity to continue to learn about building data platforms. Throughout the session, if you have any questions, please type them in. Ben will check in a couple of spots to see if we do have any questions so we can help get those answered. And then at the end, if there are any questions left over, we'll go through all of those and give you folks a chance to have all your questions answered regarding our presentation today. And of course, the presentation is Power Automate Image Analytics with Ben Watt. And at this point, I'm going to hand things over to him.
Thank you so much, Jason. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. I will start sharing my screen in a couple of seconds. Yeah, so hopefully that's coming up now for you.
Yep, it is, and it's the right screen. So I'm just going to mute myself so I don't interrupt you.
Perfect. Another quick one, Jason. Do people generally show their webcams? I haven't turned mine on, but I'm happy to turn it on. I did comb my hair and everything for this.
About 25% of people do. So it's totally up to you.
All right, you know what? I'll go with the flow. I'll leave it off for the moment. But if anyone wants to see a picture of me, then just look up, ugly Australian living in Ireland. You'll probably find that fairly quickly. Okie dokie. So welcome everybody to this session. It's a very interactive session. Now, I have to get that out there really quickly because I need you to participate. So how it's going to work today is I've set up a Power Automate, or some of us who've been around for a couple of years would know that as a flow to capture images attached to emails and do a bit of processing on them. Okay, so in a slide or two, I'm going to ask you to email me a picture, and we're going to see that go through all of the process. It will save the file somewhere nice and secure, and then we're going to do a bit of analytics on what Microsoft Cognitive Services does on it. Okay, now it sounds a bit convoluted. I've got a lovely picture that's going to walk you through that whole process. So let's bump over to the next slide. Okay, so all of your attendees, this is what I need you to do. Send in a photo. The next slide is going to show you what to do. I've got a slide to show you what the actual process is. So there's a Power Automate that does some stuff, and there's a Power BI streaming data set that captures some data. There's a normal Power BI data set that does some analytics, and all the data is saved in places like blob storage, and there's some metadata in SQL. There's a whole bunch of Azure things coming together to make this happen. Okay, a really quick thing about myself. So I have an Aussie accent, but I've been living in Ireland for the last 20 years. I have my own company that I started just nearly 2 years ago. I'm an MVP in Microsoft Data Platform. My happy space is around Power BI, but I've got a long history, cut my cloth doing SQL Server stuff. So I did some data warehousing back in SQL Server 6.5 and 7 and so on and so forth. But probably the last, probably pushing 20 years now would be more in the business intelligence space. Predominantly on the Microsoft stack as well, but I've tinkered around with things like Teradata and Oracle and Business Objects and all those other toys that are out there. What else do I do? I'm big into user groups and events and things like that. So I run the Power BI, Dublin Power BI user group. There is an online version of that now. So every Tuesday, myself and some of the other user group leaders got together and formed an online super group because we couldn't meet in person anymore in our various groups around the country. So we're all kind of clubbed together and we have a 11 o'clock Tuesday cafe session. So that runs on a weekly basis, and that's been going since the last week of March, and it's been going great. So really happy with that. There's an event that was planned for this year, but it got postponed for obvious reasons, and that's called Data Céilí. Céilí is an Irish word for a kind of a dance. It's something that happens in my local village here. The streets are cordoned off and there's a big truck that pulls up with music and everyone gets out and has a bit of a sing-song and a dance. So we figured that would be a nice name for an event. It's effectively the reincarnation of SQL Saturdays. So I've been helping run SQL Saturdays for 6 or 7 years here in Dublin as well. Power Platform World Tools and SQL Saturday, as you can see there. All my contact details are there. If you're interested to get in touch, please feel free to reach out. Okay, so this is where I ask you guys to do something, and it's really important. It doesn't have to be everybody, but as many people as possible would be great. So what I need you to do is send me an email to image@datalineo.com. So you can send that from your phone. You can use a picture that's already there. You can send, and it's really encouraged to send multiple pictures. So my Power Automate's happy enough to loop through and grab them all. But I want pictures, selfies, or you and your friends, or indeed random objects on your desk. They can be new or old pictures, whatever you like. So while I'm starting to do a bit of talking, I want you to be jumping on and sending some pictures through, please. Okay. Now, it's really important to note that nothing is permanently saved. Nothing is socialized. Nothing is shared anywhere beyond you guys and me. At the end of this, I have a lovely PowerShell script that rips everything away. The emails are deleted and nobody even knows you were there. So I just want you to feel safe that your pictures aren't going to be surfaced in fairly random places without your consent. So again, you've got no worries about sending some pictures through. So while that is happening, I'm actually going to take a picture of myself just as proof and send that through just so that we can see this happening. So I've practiced this loads and loads. Don't worry about the subject. The subject can be anything. And I'll do a reverse. Done, and boom, it's on its way. Now, for those of you who've already sent that through, what will happen is it goes in, it gets churned up and done some analysis of image object detection, facial attribute detection, a whole bunch of stuff, and you'll get a lovely email back from image@datalineo with the results of the image or images that you sent through. So that'll take a minute or two once you've sent that through. So I am going to open the next slide and we're going to have a look at what's happening. So this is the kind of the main slide for the whole day. Everything else after this is just contact details and a bit of this and that. So it's not very slide heavy today. So you'll be you're not going to get slide, what is it called, death by slide or something like that. So let's have a look at what's happening. We have Power Automate starting off the process. So for those of you who have never used Power Automate, we're going to do a real quick walkthrough of the flow that I created. And at the start of every Power Automate, there's a trigger. So something has to make it start working. You know, it's sitting there waiting and watching. And what it's waiting for is an email to come into that inbox with an attachment. So if an email comes in without an attachment, the Power Automate won't fire. If an email comes into my email address, it won't fire. That happened a couple of weeks ago. Some guy sent an email to my own email address. Obviously, it got missed, but that's okay. So what will happen then, it will go through and do the following. So you can see for every attachment that it finds, it's going to do a couple of things. First of all, it saves the image in Azure Blob Storage, okay? Now, yes, some of the data is written to SQL, and yes, I could have stored the data in SQL, but you know what? For people who've done SQL before, storing images in SQL is the worst thing you can ever do in your whole life in SQL. So I don't do it, and neither should you. So what it will do is store the image in Azure Blob Storage. It's going to write something to a Power BI streaming data set. For those of you who are not Power BI heads, a streaming data set is where you can pump data in kind of real time. It's kind of like one of those dashboards that sits up on a TV screen and has the real activity that's happening right at this moment. It's not that daily or hourly kind of refresh situation. It's the situation where you can see the active number happening right now. And that's why I have that. And I'm going to quickly pop open and have a look and see if there's some images come through. There we are. So no, nothing yet. Oh yes, sorry, there they are. So Jason, awesome, thank you very much. We have one other person so far. Jason has sent 4 emails with 4 images, a total of 7 megabytes. And one other person, I'm going to take a stab and say it's Tim or Tim Shep or TS something, but that person has sent one through. I'd love it if some more came through, and certainly it can take a minute or two if your images haven't been processed for them to appear here. But at least we have something. We've got a few images to start with. And I think I just saw another one come through in the corner of my eye, so that will pop up in a second. So let's go back to our slide. Okay, so that's the first thing it does. It goes through, grabs the email, writes that data to SQL, and that is metadata to SQL, as in who emailed it, what time it arrived, what size the image was, and so on and so forth. You can see that writes that into a nice database. Okay, then we split off and we do something in parallel. So this is where we have the image stored in Blob Storage, and that's another good reason to store it in Blob Storage, is that we can run some facial recognition APIs, some computer vision, image detection APIs, and they're built really nicely. Just go and look at Azure Blob Storage to fetch the image. It doesn't mean it means I don't have to email or call the API and stream that image through again. It can point to a Blob Storage and save us a lot of bandwidth. Okay, so the first thing it does is it looks for facial attributes. So you can see 2 things here. The Face API does facial attributes, and then it also does facial recognition. So there's 2 very similar but slightly different things. Facial attributes is where it will look for in the image, obviously for a person, and it will start to do some analysis on what it sees on that person. So the attributes of that face. So color of the hair, the gender of that person, it does, and hold on tight, it does some age estimations, and it does things like, are they wearing makeup? And it gets very detailed, like the tilt of the head, the position of the eyes, the eyebrows, a whole bunch of stuff. Now, I'm not going to analyze all of those things from the facial attributes. I just grab the ones that most people want to hear about, and that is generally the facial expression. That's another one that comes up, whether you're happy or sad, and also then the gender and age and things like that. So if you've sent a picture through of yourself, we're going to have some interesting results, and that's why I'm the first one to send some pictures through, because and I'm happy. I'm going to tell you my age when we get to it, and I'm going to show you that it makes me pretty sad sometimes as to what age it guesses me at. Again, all of that metadata is written to SQL. The other thing, sorry, is the recognition. So I have a database that I've added about 5 or 6 photos of myself into, and I've trained that model so that any images that come through from me or from you guys, it will look and see if it recognizes that in my database. Obviously, none of you have yet been added into my database, so it's going to class you as an unknown person, but it should, when I send an image of myself through, it should recognize me and it'll tag it as Ben Watt. Again, that's written to SQL. I've got a couple of other icons here because just to show you, this is a very simplified view of what's happening. And it's things like this icon here is where the JSON is parsed after the API calls. There's this one here, which is a conditional split. So what happens is I need to know what size the image is. The Cognitive Services APIs have image size limits. There's a minimum and a maximum. So I do some sizing of the images, and then this one here is a third-party product, and that will actually resize the image down. So it's called Encodian, And if I find that the image that you've sent through is 8 megabytes, the cognitive services would come back and say, no can do, you're too big. But instead of that, I resize it down to something respectable, and it goes through happily and does all the cool API things. The last one there is just a variable. So we use lots of variables through this process just to hold on to names, and I can create kind of dynamic naming and so forth to write the data into SQL and so on and so forth. The other one is then computer vision. So I'm going to look for stuff in your images. So inside your images, if there's a pair of sunglasses or a watch or something like that, it will go through and do object detection and give me a list of things that it finds in the image, as well as tags for the image. So if there's a general few things that are red, it will say red and adult and person and you know, just stuff like that. That if you have 100 million images and you want to just look for red ones, that tagging will help you to find them. And again, data is written to SQL, and this is where we then have our image analytics report. So you can see 2 Power BI things, but one is streaming and it's the real time. Let's pop over and see where we are with our real time stuff. We've got some more come through. Deb Takash, thanks very much. Sent 4 emails, awesome. So we have 18 images processed. The ones that I sent, obviously that was me doing some preparation and getting ready. So we'll see what they came through in a minute. And then at the end, once it's all done and dusted, it will reply back to you with what it found. And what's not on here is it actually will delete the email as well. So it doesn't take me to go in and get your email and delete it. If I look at the inbox for the image, the Office image, which I can pop open and prove it, you'll see that the inbox is currently completely empty. Okay, so I didn't delete them. They're gone. They're not even in deleted folders. They're gone forever. Okay, so I can't recover them. And at the end, we're going to, I'll show you the script that I run that goes off and deletes the data from SQL and from Azure Blob and the Power BI streaming data set. Okay, so I think that's all the images we're going to get. That's plenty. Happy to do that. And let's move on. I think this is just a wrap-up slide now after that. Yeah, so that's it. We're done with slides, but let's go and have a look and see what we found. So first things first, we are going to have a look at the Power Automate, which is right here. Okay, so for those of you who've never used Power Automate, this is a very quick introduction. Power Automate is part of the Microsoft 365 suite. If you have it as part of your work, you'll be able to create and run some flows. There's some limitations on how many you can create, but there's also some licensing and pricing which you can look into. If you need to actually use it a lot more, then you can go on and start to pay for that and get a little bit more usage out of it. So you can see there's a per user plan, and then with robotic process automation, and then there's a per flow plan. $15 per month is not a bad one to get you started. Okay, but even with the free one, you can get a good bit of work done. There's some limitations on how many you can run though. Okay, so quick walkthrough of Power Automate. If we have a look here, if you've never used it, the first thing you ever want to do is go into Power Automate and click on templates. Okay, so templates are just a sweet, beautiful way for you to walk into using Power Automate, and it has so many that are so easily used and so relevant that you'll get up and running without having to really, you know, that kind of first time you've ever done something, it's a bit like, I have no idea what I'm doing. This will not only do the basic hello world, but this will create a fully operational flow for you. And you know what? They're not that difficult to edit and adapt to once you start working with them. So I really find that the onboarding of Power Automate is excellent for people who who've never used it before, and that covers technical people and quite non-technical people, because it's a nice interface to do some pretty cool automation. Okay, so the first one that I ever did when I logged into Power Automate or Flow back then was this one, to send myself a reminder in 10 minutes. All it does is that you kick it off by pressing, you have to initiate this one yourself by saying run. It does a loop for 10 minutes, and then it will pop open a reminder on your mobile phone. Yeah, you obviously have to have the Flow app installed on your phone to do that one. But there's some other really cool ones that they're not too heavy on the work situation. Get today's weather forecast. This one is nice, get a push email notification when you receive your email from a boss. That's great. You could either do that or do what I do and just delete them. whatever floats your boat, but you've got tons and tons of stuff you can do just to get yourself started. So that is the place. If you've never used it, go and take one of these and create one yourself. Now we're going to have a look at today's flow, and we're going to do a bit of a walkthrough of what it's doing. So just per the slide, I'll kind of recap on this really quickly. It's looking for an email coming through. It's looping through for every attachment. It splits off and does a parallel thing to do some facial recognition stuff and some object detection stuff, and then it replies back to you with some response back on what it found. Okay, fairly straightforward, but the flow itself actually got a little bit complicated, and it took a while to get it up and running, just through, I suppose, learning things, hitting a couple of blocks, like for one, the size of the file. You know, if that only kind of came out after a couple of weeks after building it, that I sent through a huge file and it failed. You know, it got added to over and over. So we're going to pop that open and we're going to see what it's like to edit a Microsoft Flow. While that's open, Jason, any questions or anything? Hello.
Oh, sorry about that. I was reaching for the mute. No questions quite yet.
Okay. Okay, so this is the trigger. The first item you'll see is when an email arrives to image@datalineo.com, and if I select on that, it's basically the configuration of this trigger, and not much to it really. You know, it says when the folder is the inbox, and if I could pick some other folder, there's some advanced options, and one of them is to say include attachments. Yes, that's really important because this whole thing is about attachments. Now I'll speed through this because I have to initiate a whole bunch of these variables. So this X little symbol here is where I've created a new variable, and I need a bunch of them that are necessary for me to, again, name the file and grab the name of the person who sent it. I've got my API key here and all that kind of cool stuff. The blob location, all those kind of cool things. And then you can see it says apply to each attachment, and then it responds to the sender, that's you, and then it deletes the email. Okay, looks fairly straightforward so far. However, all of the work is inside here. So if I expand on this apply to attachment, what you're going to see is effectively this is a loop, and for every attachment that it finds in the email. Now, if I select on this box here, it says, you can see the text that says select an output from the previous step. Okay, now if we go right back up here, when this email arrives, the next step will have access to what this step has generated in terms of metadata, binary files and stuff like that. So if I select on this second step here, this description, okay, now it says here enter a value. Now I've entered an empty value here because I didn't need to initiate this variable with a value. But you know what I could do is if I press on this here, it's going to pop up on the right hand side here and say, hey, grab some dynamic content that has been generated above me and throw it in here if you like. And I could initiate this value with who the email was from. So if I select on that, you can see that now this variable called description list, which is of type string, is now actually going to be populated with who the email was from. I can grab anything like the subject and so on and so forth. And when we get really funky and some of the things that we can't have access to directly here, we can actually write some expressions. Okay, you can see this is a whole nother language. It's a workflow expression language. It's something that, again, if you've done lots of, say, Excel expressions or DAX expressions or any of those kind of, even though regex heads out there have done all that kind of stuff, it's not unlike that. It's just a typical function with parameters that will do some things for you, and this will allow you to extend what the data that you're getting from previous steps to a whole bunch of other things. So again, it can become very powerful as to what you can do. And I think there's a number of steps where I'm calling functions where I'm stripping apart some of the data. Okay, so let's pop way back down to here, and you can see it says go and grab something from a previous step. And when I select in it, it's going to say, right, here's all the dynamic content. And you can see now I've got the variables listed. And if I scroll down, it's bucketed into the different steps from before. So this is all of the output from the the step called when the email arrives. Here's all of that kind of stuff. Really cool, all the things that I can put into here. But what I want is all of the attachments that came from the email. So this here is actually a list of items, and that's why it's going to loop through it. And if you look where I mouse over that, you see it says trigger, body, attachments. That's the workflow expression exactly for this item here. So I can drag it and drop it from this dynamic content, or I can be super nerdy and write the full function for that there. Okay, right. We are now looping through the images, and we're going to set the image GUID. So every time I write the data into SQL, I'm writing a unique identifier. Again, I like my primary keys, don't we all? I grab the attachment details. So this is where the attachment that came in. I grab all the metadata for that attachment, and I go and do a switch statement, and which is my first function that says, now you can kind of have a close look at that. Actually, let me just go and grab my zoom it so we can zoom in there. Where are you? Zoom it. There we are. Okay, so you can see there, if I mouse over it, basically what that is doing is saying if the size is less than something or bigger than something, set this value to 1 or 2 or 0. That's effectively what it's doing, and that's a bunch of nested function statements. And the reason I do that is because I have to go 3 different ways. First things first, if the file is too small, way over here, it's going to do nothing. And the reason I did that was because a whole bunch of people were sending emails, and they had all those little annoying images in their footers, and they were getting processed as well. So if your image is less than, I think I'm going to say about 50 or 60 kilobytes, then it just ignores that completely. If it's a large attachment, it will go off and do this step, which is an Encodian third-party add-in, and that just takes the file name and the content. So this content here is actually the binary content of the file. I've set the image width to 1024, and then it goes and plops that file into my blob storage. Same thing here, if it's a normal sized attachment, it does the same thing, but I don't need to resize it, straight into blob, and off we go. And they meet back in the middle down here and says if the file size is now sufficient, we go off and start to do our parallel activity. So from our PowerPoint diagram, you can see these 2 things are happening at the same time. First thing it's doing is the facial detection. Now, I'm going to expand just one of these branches because they expand a lot and a lot and a lot, because there's a lot of conditions in these statements. And the premise and the reason for that is an image may or may not have a face in it. If it's not empty, it will then go ahead and do some additional processing. Oh, I've lost my place on this thing now. Where am I? Facial detection. If it's not empty, then it goes and inserts the row into here. And then for every face it detects, so it can detect multiple faces inside one image, and that's okay. I think it's up to 100 faces in an image of size, I'm going to say it's like 36 pixels square. Anything above that is okay. It's something around that. It might be 30. I can't remember exactly. It then goes off and says, go and do the identification of that face. And if that's not empty, so on and so forth. Okay, you can see where it's starting to do a lot of different stuff here, and finally getting down to this one. So this is the identification of the person. So you can imagine the loop within a loop within a loop. For every face that's in the image, for every face, it goes off and does some facial recognition. And if that's empty, it'll go off and do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So there's a couple of levels of nested looping in there that really do get exploded out into a lot of detail. But you can see from the graphical nature of it, it's a little bit hard to see it when it's so complicated and lots of conditions and nesting, but you know what, it's not too bad. Okay, so I just had a meeting reminder come up on my screen. And then once that's all done, you'll get your email back and the email is deleted. Okay, so maybe that's not a bad point to if there's any questions, Jason, on that particular point.
Nope, no questions yet.
Okay, no problem. Right, so we want to see the good stuff now, okay? So I'm going to open up my other Power BI report, and this one is a traditional Power BI desktop file. This one is pulling, what? There we are. This one is pulling all of its data from SQL. So all of the data that's been written is in SQL tables. All of the images that you'll see here are actually web image URLs. So within SQL, I store the location of the Azure Blob Storage so that these images can render. So they're not being saved and pulled from SQL. They're just pointers to my Azure Blob Storage. I need to do something really quick to make sure all my images are as expected, because there's some bug that I haven't yet fixed. No, I think we should be okay. So what can happen is a couple of the images don't have the GUID attached to the end of it. It's a little bit of a bug that I haven't caught yet, but I can't see any there. Okay, so what we can see here on the left is, so today I'm not going to be kind of doing massive deep dives on Power BI itself or as a product. I'll talk about how I've done it where necessary, but it's, you know, we're not going to go into DAX too much and things like that. So it's more about just looking at the results of this, but I'm happy to field questions and stuff on how I did it in Power BI, no problem. Okay, so here's a list of the images received. There is a couple of pictures that I took of myself a couple of weeks ago. One bug that I haven't resolved yet is some of the images are in portrait mode that comes through in landscape mode. It's not consistent because you can see this one here is not that way, but I have to look into that one. Okay, so you can see these are a bunch of images that I've done beforehand. Now, if I press refresh, we're going to go and capture all of the images that you guys sent through. I'm going to see our little scorecardy kind of view here is telling us how many faces were spotted out of all of those images, how many faces it recognized out of all of those images. So if you recall, there was 3 images that had pictures of myself. So they were those faces recognized, how many different objects were detected, and how many tags were created. So this is refreshing now, and we see 5 faces spotted. So we've got 2 of you had sent images with 4 recognized. Oh yeah, I sent one of myself, didn't I? Of course. Okay. Okay, so that's rendering, but the first thing I'm going to do is let's kind of have a bit of a step back and look at all the images that have been sent through. So this diagram here is just doing 2 simple things. One is looking at all of the tags that were created across all of the images. So you can see there was 459 different tags, and white and sitting and table were very common. And if I select these tags, it will filter all of these images to the ones that had white in it or sitting or what have you. So we do a quick gander around. What do we see? Some flowers. See that one there? That's the one I just took of myself. So yep, looking sharp. That one, who's that? Anybody? Jason, is that you? No, it doesn't look like you.
Oh, that's me.
Is it?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Did you take that just now?
No, not. It was a couple months ago.
Okay, fair enough. I was just going to say, are you wearing that hat in general or what? Okay, so we can see a bunch of different images come through. And so what we'll do is we're going to walk through one by one. I don't know if we'll get time to look at every single one of them. We've still got a good bit of time left, so I don't see why we can't touch on each one, at least quickly. So we have 37 objects detected, 459 tags, and here we have the object description. So when I select on an image here, what you're going to see is like a 1-sentence thing come up, and it's a very basic 1-sentence description of what Cognitive Services object detection found in that image. And sometimes it can be interesting. Okay, so I'll be honest and start with, just a little bit slow today, isn't it? Slow with rendering those images. Yeah, this did come up another time, so I'm just going to start my plan B. Okay, so let's have a look. We'll go with the Stormtrooper. And what will happen is it will tell us, yeah, it's a bit too slow. So you know what I'm going to do? I am going to do this. Okay, so what I've done there is I have a virtual machine, nice Azure virtual machine, lots more power. to render these things a bit quicker. So we're swooping really quickly to make this a bit more less waiting time for you. Okay, so Jason Straight has sent that email through. Our one sentence description is a close-up of a toy. We have our image tags here, so man, police, cake. Now these are good. We see some pretty interesting things here sometimes. Objects detected, it didn't actually detect, well, it says one object detected, so I'm not sure why that's coming up with nothing in the table. Have to look at that. You know, there's our 17 image tags. So let's do a bit of a wander through. What I did want to show you is this one. So I put a bunch of things on a table and took a photo, okay? Now, we've got a banana, we've got a wine bottle opener, keys, two things of paint, that's a nail clipper and a pair of scissors, okay? So the overall description was a bunch of ripe bananas sitting on top of a table. So, you know what, for a cognitive services thing to really put a good description of 6 random things on a table, it can be very hit and miss. Even I'm finding, and I'd love to be able to delve in and see if this can be improved. I'm finding that the objects detected can be a bit hit and miss. So you can see here that the detection comes into a parent and child structure. So you've got the object of banana and its parent is fruit. We have bottle, and the parent is tableware. I don't know if that's confusing bottle opener. We have cell phone and telephone. So I don't see anything like that. And then scissors. So you can see it's a little bit hit and miss, but I just thought I would kind of walk you through to see what kind of results you do get back. Let's have a look at this one. Great. So we have a bird sitting on the top of a plant that was sent through from Anthony. So thanks very much, Anthony. We have one object detected. Here's our image tags. So you've got tree, raptor. That's not bad. Plant, bench, hawk, not bad, you know. So I'm going to assume, Anthony, you might, if you know exactly what kind of bird that is, if it's an actual hawk, I'm not sure. It looks kind of hawk-like, but we'll have to see if that was accurate or not. Okay, let's have a bit of a wander down. This one, we have a herd. Oh my God. We have a herd of elephants standing next to a tree. Okay, so Deb, Takash, I can see a squirrel, but unfortunately, because the image is rotated, we've got this really super awesome description of a herd of elephants standing next to a tree. So yeah, you can see that one in terms of hit and miss is a little bit more on the miss side. Okay, close up of a sign. We have this one. So we have close up of a purple flower on a plant. Yeah, not bad. And here's the picture of myself. Okay, a person posing, yeah, posing for the camera, pretty close. But you can see here faces spotted, okay? It's got one face spotted in that image and one face recognized, okay? One object detected, nothing showing up here, and I actually know why that is, because this parent and child thing is a multi-level thing. So there's probably a third level here that I haven't displayed. And you can see the image tag cloud there, and I want to make, let's have a look here. Oh, I haven't got zoom in on this thing. This is the virtual machine, but yeah, we can see we've got all of these things. Old, no, not so good. But we also have young, so I'll take that one. I think I should make the text young a bit bigger next time. Okay, so let's have a look at Jason. You can see one face is spotted and no faces recognized. So it should only ever have a recognized thing if it's me, because I'm the only person in my kind of recognition little database. But you can see a man wearing a hat looking at the camera. We have 24 image tags, white suit, glasses, you know, that kind of stuff. It's a bit random, but I think if you did have hundreds of images, and maybe if we looked at this image cloud again and looked at, say, man, we selected that, it does help you narrow things down a bit. They're not all perfectly man-like pictures, but it does kind of give you a good way to reduce food. Oh my God, the 3 images of me have food. That's ridiculous. My God, they must know me so well. Okay, so let's kind of wander down because I do want to show you a little bit of more cool stuff. So I'm going to mouse over the image of myself. Okay, now I'm going to go back and do this on my local Power BI because I need to use Zoom It for this. So let's pop down and find the image of me. Definitely is a little bit slower. But what we're going to do is I'm going to mouse over and it's going to give us some additional information. Okay, so let's have a look through here. So this is kind of a summary of what it found in the image in facial expressions. So this would be a list if there's more than one person. It'd be a list of all the people in the image. And you can see there are 8 different facial expressions that it will split the value of 100% up and allocate that across as to what it sees in that face. So you can see from that one, I had a big cheesy grin. So it's allocated the full 100% to happy, okay? Now, I always like to make a point of this. If we look across at them all, anger, disgust, and happy, neutral, sad, fear, contempt, surprise. Now, after that, I'm probably guessing some of you are saying, what is that? Okay, interesting facial expression. Like if I said I met Jason down at the shop and he came in and he looked disgusted, yeah, that sounds fine. He looked sad, that sounds fine. He looked surprised, yeah. Jason looked contempt or looked contempted. I'm a bit interested about that one. And you know what? I know the answer and I know what that face is, but it took me a long time to work it out. And we're going to get to that in a minute. Now you can see that person it found, and it says here Ben what. So when we look at Jason's one in a minute, you'll see that it'll say unknown because it didn't recognize Jason. Age 44. Okay, you know what? Not too bad. I'm actually aged 45, so close enough. Gender is male. I'm not wearing eye makeup or I'm not wearing lip makeup. Okay, so you know what? Can't complain. I will say majority of the time it makes me a little bit older than I actually am. Okay, so let's pop back. I know Jason is shaking in his boots right now. Jason, we're going to see you. Okay. All right, let's mouse over and see what we see. I know, Jason, you're just looking straight at the number, right? Okay, so I'll start off with that. Jason, 35. I'm not sure if you're going to be happy or sad with that.
It's off by about a decade. I can work with that.
Sorry?
It's off by about a decade, so I can work with that.
Oh, not bad. Not bad at all then. Pretty cool. Yeah, I might start wearing one of them hats then. That might help me. And start doing that face. Okay, but now let's look at the face expression that you have on there. Now it has kind of said that it's 95% neutral, 2% sad, and 3% surprised. Okay, so there's a little bit of a spread, but what I've done is I guess I've highlighted the one that comes up as the most in there. So we have objects detected, no makeup, no lip makeup, so we're all good. And our person is unknown as expected. Okay, so we're going to do a quick wander down and have a look at a couple of images that you've sent through. So this one, quite interesting. Somebody's bought something in the shop. And because we don't need to use Zoom it, I'm going to pop this one open instead. Okay, now what are we looking at here? Clorox disinfecting wipes. What have we got? A close-up of a blue wall. Okay, so somebody's gone to Costco and bought some stuff, and yeah, we've got a pretty interesting looking result set there. Not very accurate, I would have to say. So Jason, yeah, we're not going to be making any decisions on this kind of result set, that's for sure. Okay, let's have a look. So Jason also sent through a wooden table, recently painted by the looks. Looks like it's a dark mahogany, or is it? Or what color is that? Plastic on the bottom.
Yep,
so
dark mahogany, yeah.
Yeah. So he's been busy, done some work, and you can see a wooden table, perfect. It hasn't picked up a pair of Crocs down the bottom right. But what have we got in our image tag? We've got board, man, counter, table. You kind of get the drift on that one. Let's have a look. Deb has sent through a bird swimming in the water, animal, bird. You know, we can see something there. Let's have a look. Okay, we've got another Lego close-up of a toy, much similar to what we got in the last one. We've got something, man wearing a hat, blazing saddles. I recognize that movie well and truly. So Telegram for Mongo, isn't it? Who sent that through? Anthony, well done. Love that movie, brilliant. It's the biggest selling Western movie, or most high ranking Western movie apparently in terms of revenue. So interesting. Alrighty. 2 objects detected, a man wearing a hat. Now it didn't detect faces in it, unfortunately. So I'm a bit surprised because you know what, I do find that the facial recognition and the facial attribute stuff is not bad. But I guess in this case, it wasn't quite good enough to catch those faces. Now you have to bear in mind that a front facing face is going to hit a better result each time. Sideways facing is probably causing us that one to be missed there. Okay, person sitting at a table with a cake. Deb sent that through. Did it detect any images, any people? No, but we have a good couple of objects detected there. Work our way down. This one I took earlier today, and this one's kind of weird. So this is my lovely MX Master mouse. I love this thing. I've had it for a couple of years now. I saw somebody tweet a new version of it now. It looks completely even more awesome, but I'm going to hold on to this one for a bit longer. But this one come back with a piece of luggage sitting on top of a table. Don't know why, it's probably doesn't look traditionally mouse-like, and maybe it does look a bit luggage-like. So that's what it came back with there. This is my dog. This is Alfie. So we got him in March. You can see, and if you see, if I mouse over here, this kind of pop-up window is not going to show us any facial expressions or anything like that because it only works when it's a human. Okay, last one, and this is the one where I'm pulling the face that says contempt. Now I'm back onto my virtual machine there that doesn't have Zoomer, so I'm hoping you can read that okay. But in the top line there, you can see that it's 92% contempt. Okay, it took me ages, and I sat like a fool in front of the camera, pulling all kinds of faces for a long time. Super embarrassing. My wife and my kids looking at me like I'm a fool, and they're probably not too far wrong. But I finally found the face, and it's quite simple. It's kind of, see the mouse, just the mouth is tilted to the side. That is effectively where the contempt comes from. So, if you're telling a story to somebody and they're looking at you and they're presumably listening, and their mouth starts to veer across while you're telling the really interesting part of your story, you're going to have to stop and make it a bit more interesting, or start peppering in a few maybe untruths just to increase the excitement or interesting levels of that story. Okay, bottle of Jägermeister, 15 tags, not too bad. Okay, but that's pretty much it. So we did really get to see everybody's image there, which is good. I did this session a couple of weeks ago and I got swamped with way too many images, and unfortunately we didn't get to see them all. So thanks to everybody who sent those images through. That is pretty much what I wanted to cover today. In terms of how I did this in Power BI, because we have a couple of minutes to spare, all of the data is held in a SQL table. And what you do is, if we look at some of the raw data, what we can have a look at is the image table. Off we go, my friend. Okay, and this is the data coming directly from SQL. And again, all of us SQL heads out there who've got primary keys and foreign keys up the yin yang. I've got the GUID of the actual flow that ran, the GUID of the image, and all that kind of cool stuff. So I've got nice referential integrity. I've got the image name that came through from you guys, and you can see the images. This is, again, I had to add the GUID onto the image name, and that's why I have a flow GUID, because I was getting a lot of clashes in Azure storage. So I tagged every image in Azure with the GUID. And here I've got the image URI. So this here is a direct link to my storage, my Azure Blob storage. It's not the image, it's just a link. And in Power BI, it's got a wonderful little way that if you have an actual web location and it's an image, you can just purely render that as an image in Power BI. A couple of other things like the size of the image, the date that the file was modified. You can see here, so this is in UTC. So you can see we started this session around 5 o'clock in the afternoon UTC. I'm actually an hour ahead of that because we're on our summertime at the moment. But you can see 8 minutes later, Jason was quick to get in there. I was in not long after when I did my own one, and so on and so forth. You can see Anthony came in at the end, 20 minutes in, and sent a couple just to add to the list, which was great, and so on and so forth. Just typical information that came the date that it was sent through. You can see we have the description that came through, so that's the object detection description, the confidence level of that object detection description, and that is one thing I really need to add onto this, as I thought of earlier today but didn't get to do it, was to actually add the confidence level of this object description here. So in some cases, when it sees something and gives it an object description, the confidence level can be pretty bad because it's just not quite sure. And if I try and do this really quick, even just stick in a quick table and let's see our image and confidence level. Is it in here? Yeah, confidence. Okay, so we should see, I know it's not formatted beautifully, but you can see it's 62% for that particular object there, which is not great. You know, if we look at something a little bit more easy to detect and easy to describe, or easy for a machine to describe, that this one here, which is going to be a picture of a person, man wearing a hat, the confidence level should bump up to 90-something%. So let's see if I'm right. 96%. You know, so you can tell if the confidence level is high, this object detection or object description is probably going to be a bit closer to what's actually there. But some of them, if we look at this one, and I'll finish off on this one, is this is it's a Raspberry Pi small computer device that I'm building some IoT stuff with, and it came back with an object description of a stack of flyers on a table. Okay, so for those of you out there who've ever played around with a Raspberry Pi, that there is a soil moisture content sensor. I'm building this with my 10-year-old son, and we're going to go around and test all the plants, and we have a little LCD screen that's going to pop up in green or red or whatever if the plant needs some water. But that is the Raspberry Pi, and the confidence level of that one was pretty bad because it said, look, I'm going to say it's a stack of flyers, but I don't really have an idea. And 30% is not really, it's lower than you'd kind of class it as. Anything above 90 kind of is really good, but as you're getting even less than 50%, it actually drops in. It's not quite a linear drop as far as I'm concerned. So anything less than 40 or maybe even 50, it's starting to get pretty unconfident or inaccurate in terms of its object description. Phew. Okay, so I'm going to pop back onto the slide, last one. Again, all of the content is available in GitHub. So everything that we looked at in this session, all of the code, the Power BI files, the scripts for you to create the SQL tables, the PowerShell script that I'm going to use to empty everything, it's all there on that GitHub site. So you can start to try your own version of this at home, or even just see some of the code and how I did things. I'll pop it open real quick just to show you a couple of quick views. So in terms of a PowerShell script, this one here is, I have a lot of configurations, you know, passwords and so on. So they're not, they obviously don't share those with you, but it shows you how I store them and grab them. And then I do an API to delete the Power BI streaming data set. I truncate all my SQL tables. I delete all the attachments from Azure Blob, and I write myself a little done message there. This is the tables I have in the SQL database. So I've got 5 different tables there for the overall image and all the detected objects and the tags and all that kind of stuff. And this one is a Python script which helps me look at what faces I have in my own facial recognition database. So the 5 images of me, this is where I can add to that or see what's in it, and so on and so forth. So if I want to upload more, I can kind of use this to see what's there and delete people out and so on and so forth. It's not super amazing to look at, but it just does help me keep that in check. Okay, and you can see I'm kind of half Python, half PowerShell. No reason for that. I just started writing one in Python because it was what I was using at the time with Raspberry Pi, and I'm no good at either Python or PowerShell. For those who think I've got two double skills, I've got 10% of both of them. So that's all I can really say about that. With that, we've only got a few minutes left, so I'm going to pull up the stumps right there. If there's any questions or anything like that, happy to take them. Again, all my details, I'd love it if you got into contact with questions, Twitter, LinkedIn, so on and so forth. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the session.
All right. Thanks, Ben. We do have one question and one comment. So the first, I'll do the comment, and that was a sharp shin hawk, natural to South US Texas. Okay,
perfect. So it was a hawk. So I got that right. Anyway, thanks, Anthony.
Right. And then how did you train the model?
The model of recognizing myself.
The model, probably the model in general.
Yeah. So no. Let me pop open this one. Okay. So none of this was written as machine learning algorithms by me. Okay. So I don't train any facial attributes models. I don't train any facial recognition, or hang on, I'll come back on that one in a second. I don't train any object detection models. These are all black box services from Microsoft. So all I do is pass it an image, and Microsoft comes back with what it thinks is in that image. So Microsoft is training that, and it's a service. So I pay a couple of pounds a month or pennies a month or whatever it is to use that service, but I have no input and no ability to write back any feedback into that object detection model. So I've written zero code for this, apart from calling APIs and getting a response back in JSON. Facial attributes, exactly the same. So I've no input into that. It just finds faces in the image and returns the attributes back. Facial recognition is a little bit different, but again, I'm not writing machine learning code. All I do through the, let me find the notepad if it's still open. All I do in this one, and I'm not sure if the function is here, delete group get JSON. No, it's not. So I don't have the function that's applicable here, but effectively, when I upload to the Cognitive Services Face API 5 pictures or whatever number of pictures of myself, that's all I do. And then all I do is call one more API to train the model. Okay, so that's the only, let's say, train the model that I do. But again, it's just an API call. So API number one is here's a group that I want to put these images into. I can put a number of images into, and then after that, I call another API to say, right, you've got the images, you go and train them. I have no idea what you're doing, but it will. I'm assuming you'll recognize them for future images.
All right, great. And then one more question just came in, is there some kind of default or unknown recognition phrase that led to a herd of elephants description? There was nothing like that seen in the image.
Your guess is as good as mine. I have no idea. And like, I'll honestly say it is mental that it came up with that, but a herd of elephants is just, I don't know how I got that, to be honest. I can't see that at all. So the answer to the question is, I've no idea. There's no like default answer or anything like that. So, you know, it's just really bad. It's a badly trained model is what happened. Now, the thing that I have not yet bottomed out on is, did it analyze this image in the wrong format? You can see it's being tipped to the side. However, the thing that I am a little bit more confident about is in my Azure Blob Storage container, the image there is still actually in portrait mode. So if we did flip this image into portrait mode, the way it was intended, I actually think that's the way it still came back with that pretty bad result. So what I can do after is I'm going to find the image itself in my blob storage and download it and see if it's still in a portrait format, because that will tell me that it's not because it was tilted over to the side that it came up with a bad result. It's just a bad result anyway, even though it was in the right portrait format.
Right. All
so,
right.
Yeah.
Well, those are all the questions we have today, and we're at time. So Ben, thank you for doing this. This was actually pretty cool. This was really cool. I didn't know that all this stuff was available just to knit together. When I mean, this is kind of the power of Azure and cloud services. So this has been great. Thank you.
It came about from just messing around. I kind of had an idea to do this, and then I did that and this. It's not for work purposes. It was just a hobby. But because I'm in the Azure space, I just kind of decided to build it that way. So a lot of questions that I quite often get would be, could you do this and could you do that? Can you vary it by this? And the answer is always, yeah, you sure can. But it's down to your own creativity as to what you publish.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, and thank you everyone for attending today, and hope to see everyone back. And Ben, if you've got another presentation in the future, we'd love to have you back.
Thanks very much, and thanks everyone for joining. I hope to see you all soon.
All right. Good day, everyone. Bye.